Yeah. Good day around the world, everybody. The rally has started. I was going to do a little pre-show, but I think they started early. So we're just going to cut right to it. Thank you for being here. This is Bernie Sanders live in Morgantown, West Virginia for a Care Not Cuts, which would seem to be common sense. But thank you for joining us, and we're just going to go right to it.
It worries me. So the bill proposes to reinvent the wheel by creating these new grant-funded addiction programs that somehow could replace the medical programs that we have in place now. And that sounds, as a healthcare provider, that sounds disastrous to me. So remember the thing I told you a minute ago about how we make the mistake of thinking that mind and body are somehow separate? So prior to the ACA, we thought that we could treat just the physical and not the psychological. So this new bill has the potential to make the reverse error, where we treat the psychological and we ignore the physical. So for example, if a person still has some access to addiction services after the bill would go into effect, but they would still lose medical coverage for depression or hepatitis C or traumatic brain injuries, chronic illness, and the list goes on and on. So those folks are not going to be successful in recovery because we have to treat the whole person. Additionally, it was 1967, 50 years ago, when the American Medical Association, after years of careful consideration, declared definitively that addiction is a medical condition, best treated in a medical setting by medical professionals. So when care is provided in a medical setting, patients get all the benefits of the quality control standards put forth by the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association and the American Hospital Association and many other agencies. They get the benefits of privacy and confidentiality protections offered by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. They get the benefits of knowing that their providers are properly trained and credentials. And would we ever do this with another medical illness? Would we ever say to a cancer patient, well, we're not going to pay for you to see a doctor per se. Instead, we're going to send you to Mitch McConnell's Hollywood Upstairs Recovery Center, where you're going to be seen by God knows who and receive God knows what kind of services. In healthcare, we know what to do about addiction. We're already doing it. It works. So please just let us do our jobs. So I just want to make a really quick note about jobs. Another issue that I worry about a lot on behalf of my patients is how difficult it can be to find good, safe jobs in West Virginia. And since the ACA passed, not only has it been good for my patients, but it's also been good for business. So since the ACA took effect, WVU Medicine has been able to expand their mental health and addictions operations, resulting in more jobs for healthcare providers like me, more jobs for all of the administrative office staff to run our operations, and more jobs for facilities management staff. It's been more jobs all around. And these are good jobs, safe jobs, and can often be really satisfying jobs. So since the ACA, we have steadily increased our number of spots that we have available in our comprehensive opioid addiction program, and we have still never seen the bottom of the wait list for that program. So I don't even want to imagine what would happen if the Affordable Care Act is repealed and the parity of coverage for mental health and substance use disorders is no longer in place. I know we would see more frequent and more severe mental health disorders. I know that we would see more frequent and more severe substance use disorders. We will have fewer people contributing to our local communities because of their untreated or undertreated mental health and substance use disorders. Hospitals would go back to the days where they swallow the costs of caring for these people, and we would have fewer people finding good, safe jobs in healthcare-related fields. So to me, this is just a long list of the last things that West Virginia needs right now. So very sincerely, to our Senator Capito and anyone else that can hear me, please vote no to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Save our health care. Save our health care and save our state. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hi. My name is Joel Beeson, and I'm here today to tell you my personal story of the Affordable Care Act. I was born in 1954, the youngest child of parents, yes, who both were veterans of World War II and worked their whole lives at modest jobs at a state mental hospital in California. They believed that health care and public service were one of life's higher callings, and that it was always important to put others' welfare before personal profit. They told me stories of how their parents, my grandparents, fed complete strangers during the Great Depression. And because of the values of public service they instilled in me, I became a journalist and then a teacher. And have worked full-time at WVU for the past 15 years. I'm happily married for 25 years and have 5 beautiful children who share our family's values. I was born with a rare form of hemophilia, a genetic blood clotting disorder, and spent much of my early life in and out of the hospital and the school nurse's office with episodes of uncontrolled bleeding. Sometime in the 1980s, I contracted chronic hepatitis C through a blood transfusion. And over the next 20 years, the infection and the bleeding progressed, resulting in weekly spontaneous bleeding episodes that required me to start an IV in myself to infuse blood factor. Like many members of the bleeding disorder community, I reached my lifetime maximum cap on insurance and lost my coverage because of the high cost of the medication. Unfortunately, this happened just 4 months before being placed on a liver transplant list, an opportunity for which my family and I had waited for years. My family's joy at being listed for a life-saving transplant shifted to despair and frustration at the loss of insurance, the catastrophic bills we were facing, and the immediate threat to my ability to get a transplant. Despite the many debates and challenges in the early months of the Obama administration, we began to hope that the Affordable Care Act might come in time to save my life, and it did. Yeah. The day after it was passed, we could resume coverage with our original insurance plan, and we were back on the transplant list. This healthcare reform enabled a miracle that occurred on October 29, 2012, when I received a liver transplant at the Cleveland Clinic. An amazingly courageous woman and friend, Rachel Fetty. Where are you, Rachel? Where's Rachel? Over here? Who, by the way, was elected to the Morgantown City Council this year. Yeah. Woo-hoo. Step forward as a living donor. The transplant has given me another 5 years and counting of life with my family, to continue raising my children and make a living. Because of my ability to access quality health care and because of the support I've received from my community, a lot of people who brought food and all sorts of other things, I thank you too. I've been able to continue working throughout, taking only 6 weeks off for the transplant. I no longer need infusions of tens of thousands of dollars in clotting factor. I can continue to be a father to my children, a husband to my wife of 25 years, a teacher to my students, and a tax-paying citizen who contributes to our community. This past year, I developed post-transplant lymphoma and underwent chemotherapy for 6 months, for which I am now in remission. So I'm still blessed, still blessed. But now we find ourselves in the same state of anxiety and uncertainty about what the future will bring as we did back in 2010 before the ACA was enacted. I'm here in front of you today only because of the dreaded Obamacare. And now my life and my family's lives hang in the balance as our health care is threatened once again by a Congress hell-bent on putting politics above the needs of the American people. There you go. My story should not be extraordinary or rare in a country as great as ours. My story is a story of the profound generosity of a private citizen who courageously and unselfishly gave of herself to save another life, and a healthcare system that puts people above greed. And that makes my kind of miracle possible, and possible for other people. We as a people can do better than this. And so I'm calling upon all of you to keep pressure on your senators and representatives and let them know that we can do better than this and we won't stand for this. Thank you.
My name is Kelly Allen, and I just wanted to thank everybody who came out today to spend their Sunday fighting to protect our care, because we know it is what is right. And I wanted to thank Senator Sanders for reminding us what a true public servant looks like. Thanks. I'm a native West Virginian. I grew up just south of here in Fairmont. Soon after I came to WVU for college, I was diagnosed with a primary immunodeficiency. Basically, after a case of mono, my body became unable to produce antibodies to fight off any infections, large or small. I was told that I need to undergo weekly infusions for the rest of my life to replace the antibodies that my body was unable to create. So, once a week, I put my feet up on the couch, I turn on an episode of Real Housewives, and I give myself an infusion for about 2 hours. And it works awesome. You would never even know I had a chronic illness standing here in front of you today. But there is one catch. The medication costs around $70,000 a year. And I was lucky. I've always had employer-sponsored health coverage, but I, like the 36% of West Virginians with pre-existing conditions, benefit from Obamacare's patient protections. But just to go back a little bit, in 2005, when I was diagnosed pre-ACA, I was covered through my mom's job. And every month when it was time to send out the next batch of medication, like clockwork, a representative from my insurance company would call. She would say that the insurance company was no longer going to cover my diagnosis, the medication, or me altogether. My mom would argue with her, threaten to get an attorney on the phone, and work magic in one way or another. But we were forced to ration medication. I would either take less than the prescribed dose or stretch the time between infusions from 10 days instead of 7, just to make sure we always had a stash on hand for the months that the medication might not come. Before Obamacare, there were no caps on patient out-of-pocket costs. My family had to take out a loan using their home as collateral to pay for our share of my medication. And before Obamacare, insurance companies were allowed to impose lifetime limits on patients, meaning that once you hit your lifetime limit, the insurance company would never pay another dime for you. You were on your own. I lost my place. Okay. So my lifetime limit was $1 million. And at $70,000 a year in medication, I would have hit that limit in about 15 years. That means I would have been uninsurable at the age of 36 years old, without any help paying for the medication that keeps me alive and costs way more than a year's salary at my job. But thanks to the ACA, I no longer have to risk my mom's home or my own to pay for my portion of my life-saving medication. I no longer have to worry about being dumped off my coverage because an insurance company has decided I am too expensive to be worth it. I was even able to take a grant-funded job doing something I love, even though I know it's short-term, because I now have the security that my pre-existing condition will not allow insurers to deny me coverage. Prior to Obamacare, we called this situation job lock, because people like me with chronic conditions were essentially handcuffed to jobs that offered benefits. We couldn't start our own businesses or take a job that we were passionate about that might not involve benefits. And the job I was able to take? Well, I help people sign up for Obamacare and the Medicaid expansion. I work with West Virginians every single day who have stability and security thanks to the Affordable Care Act. Some are small business owners, some are chronically unemployed or underemployed, some are taking care of sick family members or dealing with their own addiction or mental health issues. But the one thing they all have in common is that they are proud West Virginians working every single day to better themselves and their families. And they are not the only ones that would be affected by ACA repeal, not by a long shot. Everyone in this room has a family member that has benefited from Obamacare, whether it was the patient protections that helped me, the Medicaid expansion, the coverage on the exchanges, or the improvements to Medicare. And every single one of us has something to lose if the ACA is repealed. But we will not allow our lifelines to be taken away. And I am confident that we will prevail and protect our care. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. And didn't mean to blow your ears out. Thank you for being here. We've got more than 160.
My name is Rusty Williams, and I'm living proof that the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid expansion specifically is saving lives every day. Thank you. I'm sure some of you, if you watched the video that Senator Sanders posted, you may have heard some of my story, but I was diagnosed with cancer in 2012, and I didn't have insurance. I worked in a small business, and it was just out of reach. I couldn't afford it. So being diagnosed with cancer is one thing, but being diagnosed with no insurance is probably the most terrifying thing you could wrap your brain around. I thought my life was over. I had accepted it, basically no insurance, late-stage cancer diagnosis. What are your options? I ended up going through a group called the West Virginia Catastrophic Illness Commission. They gave legal advice and basically got coverage for me. When no one else would help, all other avenues were closed. And they saved my life. And if anybody in here knows anyone affiliated with that group, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you do for the people of West Virginia. But in the richest country in the world, nobody should ever have to get a lawyer to get medical coverage. It's just not acceptable. The politicians that are running the show, they like to tout that we're the moral compass of the world. If that's true, then our compass is broken and the ship is about to go over the falls. You can't tell me that we are the moral compass for the world and, on the other hand, push through a plan that's going to strip health care coverage from millions of people. That's inhumane and it's unacceptable. We have to hold them accountable. We send them to office with the thought that they're going to represent us and they're going to do what's in our best interest. And more often than not, that's not the case. I'm one of the lucky ones. Although I had to get legal help and I had to fight for weeks battling just nonsense, the cancer spread, my situation got worse. But I'm still one of the lucky ones because I'm here and I'm able to speak out for people that maybe weren't so lucky. Thank you. And I feel that's what we have to do. If you are in a position to stand up for someone that can't or maybe won't stand up for themselves, you have an obligation to do that. We're all in this together, all of us. I don't care what party you are affiliated with. I don't, Democrat, Republican, none of that stuff matters when it comes to health care. It's a basic idea that our country, our tax dollars, everything we should take care of our own. We should take care of our people, regardless of the nonsense that makes us different. We should focus on what makes us the same. And it's not easy to stand up and talk about going through cancer. It's not easy to stand up and essentially have to relive the most terrible situation that I've ever been in my life. But I feel like these stories, they have to happen because one thing I learned when I was going through cancer, it was a pretty dark time. And I feel like the natural response when you're in a dark place is to look for any little pinhole of light you can find, right? And you focus on that light. Anything you can focus on to get yourself out of it. But what I realized was those pinholes don't exist. If you look for those little pinholes everywhere, you're going to wander around in the darkness forever until you realize that you are the light. You light that darkness up. Then you'll be fine. But we are all the light. We're in some dark times right now. If we work together and we stand up for each other, we light it up. And that's what has to happen. But I'm a nervous wreck. I hope that doesn't come across too much, but yeah, it's stand together, stand up and fight. Fight, like I said, fight like your lives depend on it, because for thousands of us it does. People like me, I can stand here and I can speak my truth, and maybe it'll connect with some people. But what about the people that can't speak for themselves? This bill is going to cut people on, maybe Alzheimer's patients, people that have neurological disorders that rely on machines to live. And a lot of these people live at home with waivers provided through the Medicaid expansion. When you cut that out, you're essentially throwing the most vulnerable of our society on the street. Now, my question to the lawmakers pushing this bill is a very simple question. How the hell do you sleep at night? And these problems, it's not like some boogeyman came out of the sky and is pushing these nonsense policies. These people have faces and names and addresses and phone numbers. We know who they are. So my advice is call them every day. Blow their phones up. Let them know that you're paying attention and you're not going away. Let them know that we are together. No matter what, we're going to stand together. We're going to fight for those that can't fight for themselves. And when this is over, everyone in this room and everyone that has stood up and has been part of this movement, you all will be able to celebrate the fact that we will deliver universal health care to this country. It will happen. So keep fighting, and thank you all. How you doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, thank you all very much. Love you too. And let me thank all of you for coming out this afternoon and standing up for justice, for standing up for decency, and standing up for dignity. And let me also thank you for being here to stand up for democracy and to demand that we have a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. And I want to thank the organizations who have helped us put on this event. Mountaineers for Progress, thank you very much. I want to thank Credo and Our Revolution and MoveOn.org and Daily Kos as well. And also, and most importantly, I think I want to thank those people, and it took a whole lot of courage for them to do that, to come before you and to talk about their personal issues and their health care issues. And that's not easy. We've got a lot of people in this room. This thing is being live streamed all over this country. I mean, it's not easy to come up before a group of people and talk about some of the most personal things in your life. So I want to thank Emily and Joel and Kelly and Rusty Williams for their willingness to come up here. And they understand in being here, and you understand, that they're not just talking about their own situations. They are talking about millions of other Americans, people in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, all over this country, in Vermont, who have the exact same problems. So I thank them for having the guts to get up here and talk about the reality of their lives and what this terrible legislation will do to them and to millions of others. Now, I am more than aware that Donald Trump did very well in the state of West Virginia. I got that. But what I want to say is that during his campaign here in West Virginia, in my state of Vermont, Pennsylvania, all across this country, Donald Trump told the people that he was going to be a champion of the working class, that he was going to stand up and take on the establishment because he understood the pain that millions of people in this state, in my state, and all over this country were feeling. Well, what I have to tell you, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but I suspect most of you already know it, Donald Trump was not telling you the truth. The so-called, and I use the word so-called intentionally, health care bill passed in the House several months ago, strongly supported by President Trump, is the most anti-working class legislation ever passed in the modern history of our country. And the Senate bill, also supported by Trump, in some respects is even worse. At a time when working families in this state, in my state, and throughout this country are struggling to put bread on the table, struggling to make ends meet, this legislation will cause massive harm to millions of our families from one end of this country to the other, and we are here today to say we're going to do everything possible to make sure this legislation never passes. We are gathered here today to make a very, very simple point. And what we are saying as clearly as we can is that we will not allow 22 million Americans to be thrown off the health insurance they currently have in order to give over $500 billion in tax breaks to the wealthiest 2%, to the drug companies, and to the insurance companies. Plain and simply stated, this legislation is not a health care bill. What it amounts to is a massive transfer of wealth from the working class of this country to the wealthiest people in America. While there are massive cuts to Medicaid in this bill, while seniors in West Virginia, Vermont, and all across this country will pay significantly higher premiums for the health care that they need, while Planned Parenthood will be defunded, the 400 highest income taxpayers in our country, most of whom are billionaires, will get about $33 billion in tax cuts. At a time when the middle class of our country continues to shrink, and when people in this state, in my state, and states all across this country are working longer hours for lower wages, are working desperately to pay the rent, to pay for the electric bill, to put gas in the car, We will not support legislation which cuts health care from people in this country who need it the most to give tax breaks to the people who need it the least. That, brothers and sisters, is not what this country is supposed to be about. And let me say a few words to my colleague, someone who I've known for many, many years, Shirley Moore Capito. Senator Capito, in America, we are not supposed to be taking from the most vulnerable people in our country, from the children, from the elderly, from the disabled, from the sick and the poor, in order to give massive tax breaks to billionaires. This is a deeply immoral piece of legislation. And I urge Senator Capito, please join your fellow West Virginia Senator, Joe Manchin, and vote no when this bill comes up before the Senate. It is no secret that the Republican leadership is scrambling to get the 50 votes they need out of the 52 Republican members who are in the Senate. And they are scrambling because the more that the American people learn about this horrific piece of legislation, the harder it will be for anybody to vote for it. And where we are today is that if 3 Republican senators, only 3, vote no, this bill is dead. And my strong belief is that if Senator Capito votes no on this legislation, it will make all of the difference, and this bill will die. Now, not only is this bill a disaster for West Virginia, for my state, and for the entire country, but the secretive backroom process by which it has been written is unprecedented and literally beyond belief. Now, this bill, as all of you know, impacts about 1/6 of our economy, over $3 trillion each and every year. And this legislation literally touches the lives of every single American. Yet the discussions and negotiations on this legislation, which I am sure are taking place in Washington right now, have never been made public. Everything about this legislation has been done behind closed doors. Now, I want you to think about it and to appreciate how crazy this is. There have been no doctors, no nurses, no hospital administrators, no representatives of senior citizen groups, no one who is knowledgeable about the opioid crisis who has testified about the impact that this legislation will have on the people of our country. How can you draft a bill of such enormous magnitude without hearing one public comment from the experts in our country who are most knowledgeable about health care? That is an absolute disgrace. I am a member. I'm a member of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, the committee that has responsibility for health care. We have not heard one word about this legislation, and that is not acceptable. Now, it is un-American. You know, we can disagree on legislation, but the American people have a right to know what is in that legislation. Now, we may not know what's in the legislation. We may not know about how the deliberations are going on, but we do know one thing, and that is the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, is now trying to make deal after deal with this senator or that senator in order to get the 50 votes that he needs. And I say again to Senator Capito, please do not fall for that old trick. This legislation is fatally flawed, and no small tweak here or there will undo the massive damage that this legislation will do to our country. And further, I say to Senator Capito, if you do not believe what I am saying in terms of how bad this legislation is, listen to virtually every major healthcare organization in this country, all of which oppose this terrible bill. Listen to the AARP, the largest senior group in America, who understands that this bill will be a disaster for seniors and for older workers. Listen to the American Medical Association, a conservative group of doctors who understand that they will not be able to do their work effectively if this bill is passed. Listen to the American Hospital Association, who worries that many, many rural hospitals in areas where we need them the most will be shut down if this legislation is passed. Listen to the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, the Federation of American Hospitals, the Catholic Health Association, the American Lung Association, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the March of Dimes, the National MS Society, and the American Nurses Association. All of these groups oppose this legislation. So I say to my friend Senator Capito, I say to Senator Capito, when all of these groups, virtually every major health care organization in this country opposes this legislation, this is legislation that should not pass. Now, all of you know that several months ago, with the strong support of President Trump, the House passed their disastrous health care bill. While the Senate bill is very similar, let me very briefly describe to you some of what the House bill actually does. Now, one of the concerns that I have is that, according to polls, about half of the American people do not know what's in this legislation. And our job is to get the word out to all of our friends and all of our neighbors, because the more that people learn about this legislation, the less support it will have. Now, what the House bill does is it says that at a time when 28 million people in our country today, before this legislation, 28 million have no health insurance, and millions more are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments, that bill, the House bill, would throw 23 million Americans off of the health insurance they currently have, including 122,000 right here in West Virginia. That would bring the number of uninsured in our country to over 50 million people. In other words, instead of moving in the direction of providing health care to all, this bill almost doubles the number of uninsured in America. That is unacceptable. Now, everybody knows that the Affordable Care Act is far from perfect. Our job now is to improve it, not destroy it. Instead of throwing 23 million Americans off of health insurance, we should be fighting to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a right, not a privilege. I would like very much for each and every person here to think for a moment about the human implications of this bill and what it would mean to you, your child, or your parent if they lose the health care that they currently have. I want you to think about it for a moment. What does it mean? Just think about it. What does it mean if today you are suffering with cancer? We heard from Rusty. What does it mean if you are suffering with heart disease, with diabetes, and suddenly you find yourself with no health insurance? You had health insurance, but because of this legislation, that health insurance disappeared. What happens to you if you have cancer, heart disease, diabetes, or any other life-threatening illness, and you cannot afford to go to the doctor when you have to? What happens if you have a heart attack or a stroke and you have no health insurance? And the horrible and unspeakable answer, and we have got to be honest about that, is that if this legislation were to pass, many thousands of our fellow Americans would die, and many more would suffer and become much sicker than they should. Now, that is not Bernie Sanders talking. That is what study after study after study shows. Several weeks ago, after I made that point, the point that I just made to you, on a television show, I was criticized by Republicans and by right-wing critics. And they thought, oh, Bernie Sanders isn't a hyperbole, talking about people dying. He's exaggerating how terrible it is for him to frighten the American people. Well, PolitiFact, a nonpartisan group that checks out what public officials say, took a look, in response to my statement, took a look at over a dozen different studies on the issue of mortality rates, whether people live or die, and lack of health care, lack of health insurance, and concluded that what I said was exactly right. Now, obviously, nobody can predict exactly how many people will die if they lose their health coverage. Nobody can make that prediction. But what experts at the Harvard School of Public Health estimate is that if 23 million Americans are thrown off of health insurance, which is what the House bill does, the Senate has 22 million people thrown off, up to 28,000 people every single year could die as a result of that legislation, and that is 9 times more than the tragic losses we suffered on 9/11 each and every year. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, thousands of people should not be dying every year unnecessarily. And let me briefly tell you what happens when you cut Medicaid by over $800 billion nationwide over a 10-year period, and you cut Medicaid by $12 billion here in West Virginia. $12 billion over a 10-year period here in West Virginia. What it means is that if you are a child with a severe disability, you will no longer get the health care that you need to adequately function. An estimated 11 million children, or 15% of all kids in the United States, have special health care needs. They may have conditions such as Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, or autism. They may have mental health needs such as depression or anxiety or complications from premature birth. Today, Medicaid and CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, cover 5 million or 44% of these children, providing them with coverage so that they can live with dignity and security. Right here in West Virginia, Medicaid and CHIP cover 47% of children with special needs. 47%. Medicaid helps these children, and sometimes people aren't aware of this. Medicaid helps these kids get special education at school, long-term care, personal assistance from nurses, and I want to thank all of the nurses here who do the great work that they do. And I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it because our Republican colleagues don't want you to think about it. I want you to think about what it means if Medicaid undergoes massive cuts. What happens to those children with special needs? And the truth is that given the fact that nearly 75% of children with special needs come from low-income or middle-class family, many of those kids are going to be left out there on their own without any outside support. I want you to think about what that means to the future of those children's lives. But it's not just the children. What about the entire family? Right now, if you're a mom or a dad or a family with a kid with special needs, you can go to work. You can earn a living knowing that your child is taken care of. But if that care ceases to exist, and you have to stay home with your kid, and you can't go to work, or you work fewer hours, your family will be plunged into economic crisis. Now, what kind of country are we when you have a majority of the House and you have many members of the Senate who think that it is appropriate to cut funding for disabled children in this country to give tax breaks to billionaires? That's not the America we believe in. But it is not just the children who will suffer if this bill is passed. It is the elderly. What every person in West Virginia and America should understand is that Medicaid now pays for over 2/3 of all nursing home care in this country. Nobody knows that. Over 2/3 of nursing home care. So what happens to the 7,000 seniors and persons with disability in West Virginia who are receiving their nursing home coverage paid by Medicaid? Who will pay for their care if Medicaid is slashed? How many seniors now in nursing homes will get thrown out on the street or be forced to live in their children's basements? How many middle-class and working-class families will now have to choose between whether they take care of their parents or whether they're able to send their kids to college. This is America. People should not have to make that choice. But it is not just, but for older people, it is not just nursing home care that is going to be decimated by this legislation. If you are a worker today in Morgantown who is 60 years of age and you make $40,000 a year, your average health insurance premiums will go up from about $4,000 a year now to nearly $8,000 per year under the Republican plan. At a time when half of Americans 55 and older have no retirement savings, this could cause disastrous harm for millions of people who have worked their entire lives. People have worked their entire lives, they put a few bucks in the bank, and now they're going to see their health care premiums almost double. That is not the way you treat people who have worked their entire lives. But once again, this is not my opinion. This is not Bernie Sanders talking. I want you to hear what the AARP, the largest senior group in America, says. This is a recent statement they made a few weeks ago. This is what they said, quote, "This new Senate bill was crafted in secrecy behind closed doors without a single hearing or open debate, and it shows. The Senate bill would hit millions of Americans with higher costs and result in less coverage for them. AARP is adamantly opposed to the age tax, which would allow insurance companies to charge older Americans 5 times more for coverage than everyone else, while reducing tax credits that help make insurance more affordable." That's not Bernie Sanders. That is the AARP. Now, let me touch on another issue that is impacting my state of Vermont very severely. It is impacting the entire country, but it is probably impacting no state more severely than here in West Virginia. And I know that I don't have to tell anyone here about the massive and horrific opioid epidemic that is devastating communities all over this country. And again, I don't want you to think it is just West Virginia. A couple of years ago, governor of the state of Vermont used his State of the State address to talk in Vermont about our opioid epidemic. The truth is that each and every day, more than 90 people die in America from an opioid overdose. Just talk to police officers and tell you that almost every day they're out trying to deal with people who have overdosed. Nearly 4,000 people begin abusing prescription painkillers, and almost 600 start using heroin each and every day. This is a frightening epidemic. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, West Virginia's drug overdose death rate is the highest in the nation, nearly 3 times the national average. In West Virginia, on average, 1 person died from drugs every 10 hours in 2016. 85% of those deaths involved an opioid. According to a recent article in the Washington Post, quote, "Drugs are killing so many people in West Virginia that the state can't keep up with the funerals," end of quote. Now, at a time when this state is estimating that it has 150,000 residents with an opioid disorder and only 156 detox beds to serve them, clearly the resources available for treatment and prevention today are totally inadequate. And that is true for the nation as well. So in other words, here in West Virginia, And in my state of Vermont, we don't have the facilities or the capabilities of dealing with this opioid epidemic that is sweeping the nation and killing so many people. What we're doing today is inadequate. What happens if this legislation is passed and Medicaid funding is slashed? And what we must understand is that Medicaid pays for about 45% of all addiction treatment in the state of West Virginia today, 45%. If you cut Medicaid by nearly $800 billion nationally, it will mean massive cuts here in West Virginia that will result in some 17,000 people not getting the treatment they desperately need to deal with this addiction. That is criminal. That is absurd. We cannot allow that to happen. As a nation which is dealing with this crisis from coast to coast, our job is to come up with a comprehensive program to expand treatment and prevention, not to throw hundreds of thousands of people off of the treatment they currently have. Now, you know, a lot of my Republican friends, they talk about choice. They want the people in America to have all the choices they can, go to whatever insurance company you want and so forth and so on. Well, turns out that 2.5 million women in this country have chosen Planned Parenthood as where they want to get their health care. And this legislation would defund Planned Parenthood and take that choice away from 2.5 million women. And what this means is here in West Virginia, the Planned Parenthood Health Center in Vienna could be forced to close, leaving nearly 900 patients without the care they desperately need. Unacceptable. Is exactly correct. It is unacceptable. Let me, you know, as a United States Senator, I get emails and phone calls and letters from people all over my state, but also all over the country. What I want to do is take a moment to, again, humanize, put a human face on what this legislation would do. So let me just read, if you'll allow me, a few of the letters that I have recently received. Here is a letter that came from a mother who wrote, very simply, simple statement. She said, quote, "My adult son has Down's syndrome. He can barely get by with what few Medicaid services are available now. Please don't punish my son for needing these services." End of quote. And here's an email I got from a father, and he writes, quote, "Trump Care will allow insurance companies to deny health insurance to people with pre-existing conditions. In my family, this could disqualify my son, born with a defective heart valve, who must have costly open heart transplant surgery to get a new valve every 10 to 14 years. Another letter. I am 38 years of age. I'm well educated and had a great job. But I developed chronic migraine. I am so disabled I can no longer work. I just qualified for Medicaid. It will be my lifeline as I fight daily pain and other debilitating symptoms. If the bill passes, I fear that it will become a choice between draining my family's financial resources, even facing bankruptcy, so that I can continue to access the limited medical treatments I have that help my condition." Another letter. Quote, "I am a psychologist. Most of my patients, many of them dealing with the experiences of autism, trauma, eating disorders, and/or anxiety, can only receive services because they are covered by health insurance. This disastrous bill could allow insurance companies to deny coverage for mental health diagnoses, making it very difficult for the bulk of my patients to access services." Now, what is very interesting about the politics of what's going on right now is that, as you may know, this legislation in the Senate is widely, widely opposed by the American people. Poll after poll shows that the American people do not want this legislation passed. According to the latest USA Today Suffolk University poll, just 12% of the American people support the Senate Republican plan. 12%. As a matter of fact, according to a recent report, this legislation is the most unpopular piece of legislation ever to hit the Senate floor in the last 30 years. It is even more unpopular, if you can believe it, than the Wall Street bailout. Now, why is it, and I want you to think about this for a moment, why is it that if the vast majority of the American people oppose this legislation, why is it being aggressively pushed? How does that happen? The American people say no, and the answer goes to something even deeper than this legislation and the overall health care crisis that we face as a nation. The answer as to why this legislation is being pushed is that increasingly government does not respond to the needs of ordinary Americans and does not care about the needs of ordinary Americans. Especially since the passage of the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. What Congress does is pay attention not to working people, not to the elderly, not to the sick, but to wealthy campaign contributors. Congress responds to the needs of the billionaire class, and it responds to the needs of multinational corporations and their paid lobbyists. Yes, the American people overwhelmingly do not want this legislation. Yes, this legislation will be a disaster for the people of West Virginia, but that is, in terms of Congress, not what is important. What is important is that the billionaire class and campaign contributions want this legislation. They are more interested in the tax breaks, the large tax breaks that they will receive, than they are about whether disabled kids get thrown off of health insurance or whether seniors see a doubling of their premiums. Our job today, at a time when the richest people are becoming richer, while almost everyone else is becoming poorer, is to tell the United States Congress to begin listening to ordinary Americans and not just the 1%. In my view, our job today is to do everything possible to defeat this terrible legislation which will harm so many people. Our job tomorrow is to join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care is a right through a Medicare for all single-payer program. And our job and what today is about, our job every single day is to continue the fight for a political revolution. so that the day comes sooner than later when we have a government that listens to the needs of the elderly and the children and the sick and the poor, and not just wealthy campaign contributors. Brothers and sisters, the Senate bill is a moral outrage, and together we are going to defeat it. Thank you very much.
Well, they ended that really quick. Thank you all for being here, everybody. That was a fantastic speech by Bernie. And I can't play what they're playing because they're going out with David Bowie, and that always kills the broadcast. They don't think about that. Good song, though. Just can't run it. And I was so into what he was saying, I wasn't even paying attention. 400 of you watching right now. Got Laura Livegood with me. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Thank you for being here. Hey, Laura.
Hey there. Do I have audio?
You do.
Oh, yay. Hey, everybody. Great chat. For 390 people, I had to time out one person. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Give me a second. I gotta rearrange screens. Where are you? You're over there. There we go.
Here I am.
Hey. Okay. Now we got both of us here. Thank you all so much for joining us. Just 1,000 playbacks already. That was, he's working on a new, I mean, that's like a new speech he's got going on. You can see the last month he's been honing this, you know, healthcare focused speech. But he also threw in a lot of other stats in there too, about other things. Really knocking Congress. That was pretty, I liked it. What'd you think?
Yeah, he rolls up his sleeves and gets down to business. We always like that about him.
Yeah. It was
so people
good.
are wondering if we're going to do the Kentucky one later on. What do you think? How hot is it there? We still got Walter on, so it can't be too hot.
It's not bad. It's actually pretty good. It's not, but I don't know what time. What time is the Kentucky one start? Because I gotta plan it around things here. I've been given chores. I have things I gotta do. And
He's got to honeydew this.
I do have a job. I'm supposed to be doing things, and I do my job. But if I were truly employed at it, my boss would always be pissed because I spend more time in here with this than I do on that. So, you know, but it's it's a honeydew list. It's very important. But if you guys want, I will try to make it happen. Do we know what time it happens? We find out. It's. I had
6 to 8 p.m. Sunday, so that's 3 o'clock our time, Pacific.
What are we at now? I got plenty of time. Yeah.
Yeah,
why not? I'll load it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it. That sounds
so
good.
You want to do it like 15 minutes before? So 5:45?
Yeah, same thing. We'll start 15 minutes before, and they'll start early, and then we'll just go right into whatever they're doing, because that was good. They moved. You noticed that? Like, they got this down now. Remember in the old days, it was like we were waiting, what's going on, the person wasn't there. And now it's like, but I think that was really because they were vamping for an hour waiting for Bernie to be done with his pre-rally speech with the people outside, you know.
Those testimonials, though, were really powerful. You know, this is what happened to me. And I'm here because of the Affordable Care Act. And I know so many people who didn't have insurance for years and years and years are finally able to, like, oh my God, I can have insurance now, and I can have good insurance, and it's only going to cost me about $100 a month.
Yeah, and I mean, we know people that are directly affected by this. I think everybody has somebody that's being affected by this. You know, Scott Galindez, he's in that situation right now. Scott Galindez does live streaming for us. He was one of the founders of Truth Out. He helps found Bernie 2016 TV with me, and right now he can't get a kidney transplant. And it's because of the changes that have been made. I mean, it's because we don't have insurance in this country. And every other country has it, something better for the most part, except for maybe Turkey. We always talk to Dennis about that. Turkey, maybe not so bad. But, you know, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And all we've got to do is get rid of those people in office that are really not looking out for the people's interests. Bernie called it out. Congress, he said, Congress caters, you know, to the billionaire class. They respond to, kind of talking about him like a dog, right? I like that. He's getting a lot harsher with his words. You think after 30 years of being polite, he's ready to be a little more, in his Bernie way. And thank you, Darcy, for sharing the patron link, and I appreciate that, guys. Really do. That helps.
I've been doing that actually we forget to mention that. We really should mention that once in a while.
I know, but
Yeah, almost 14,000 subscribers and only 30 patrons. That's just not right.
Well, we don't get that. I know, but we don't get that many people here, I'm the one that shoots that down by telling everybody, if you've only got $5, give it to Bernie, give it to a local candidate that needs it, because I'll get along. Laura and I keep doubling our salary every couple of weeks.
Yeah,
we're doing all right.
I know, we're really raking it in now.
Yeah, we're doing. Yeah, but really, thank you all for being here. I did have in the description of this event, there are lots of links to some material that I was going to run. I don't think I'm going to do that now. I'd rather save it. Maybe we'll do that as the pre-show if they start more in time for the next one. I'm going to go do my chores now. But share. I posted a lot of stuff on Twitter while this was going on. So share that stuff. Get that out there and share this video, please. All right. This is a nice short thing. We got a little chunk of Bernie there, and we can cut that out. I think he's doing like a 30-minute. I think that timed out to be about 30 minutes.
Yeah, roughly.
So that was nice. That was really nice.
Yeah, that was good.
I love you guys. I look over in comments, and the first thing I see is, fuck's sake, typos, Jonathan Dangle. It's all right, John. It's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm blasting you guys out with volume. Did I just... hang on. Hard to get these things adjusted. All right. We are going to go out with a song, though, because we always do that.
Oh, good.
And...
what are you doing?
Well, I had a couple looking at it. Let's see, I was... Hang on, let me pull this down here. We're going to go out with Gil Scott-Heron, just because it's important. A lot of people would ask me to talk about net neutrality, and I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about that, because I honestly don't know what to do about it, other than to do the same thing we've been doing with the healthcare, which is show up angry and at your representatives, at their door, right? Go to their house, go to their office, get thrown in jail because you went to their office, which is happening more and more. Paul Ryan's now afraid to even meet with people. He says it's angry people that are going to yell at him. Yes, those are your bosses, Paul, right? You're the boss. So that's if we're going to get these things changed, like net neutrality, if we're going to work on that, if we're going to focus on anything in that regard, we have to put pressure on our bosses regarding it. Right now, they're feeling pressure about healthcare. They don't give a shit about net neutrality. They're not even thinking about it. They don't care. To them, it matters not. Right?
So you're going to do Revolution won't be televised?
Right. Yeah. Because.
Okay. Oh, good.
Right.
I love that one.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're going there. We're going to do that one because it seems to be apropos. Right? Anyway.
And yet from so long ago.
Really? Well, yeah. If you guys don't know who Gil Scott-Heron is, I mean, I learned about him briefly, right? Got the gist of Gil Scott-Heron from primaries from 2 years ago when it was suggested by somebody, and somebody made this is who did this? This Brewster Holmes. I think they created the Bernie Sanders version. I'm not sure though because this was done. This is back in 2015, but. This is a
the
Bernie
original
Sanders
was Vietnam era, right?
Yes, yeah. Gil Scott-Heron was a spoken word poet, activist, artist, and he really had did a lot of groundbreaking work in that area. It's if you listen to, you're going to hear the original song here. This is the original song. Yeah. It's interesting. I would almost call it like, I don't know, it's spoken word, right? So it's like proto rap, hip hop, really. It's very cool. When I first heard it, I didn't realize it was from back then. I actually thought it was a retro thing done today for Bernie Sanders. That's how good it is, right? So really cool stuff. And sadly, the message is nothing's changed.
Right.
It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
It won't be televised, but it will be streamed.
Exactly.
And it will buffer.
Yes. It will. We've done all right though because it's not blazing hot. At least where I am. But for you, Laura, it's pretty hot today, right? You guys dealing with?
No, it cooled down. We were over 100 for 2 days in a row. And we were dying last night, but living close to the coast, we aren't long before the fog comes in and cools everything down. So,
nice. Did you Whittier, Santa Barbara on fire, big fire there, and some other place, L.A. is so hot, lost power. I don't know if they got power back, but that's I was thinking about that. I just wanted to make a comment on that because I was going to talk a little about climate, but we're on the healthcare thing. But healthcare, climate, kind of related, right? Either dead one way or the other. L.A.
excessive heat is not good for one's health.
Right. And I mean, I used to live in California. You've been to L.A. You've seen the concrete land. Think of how much more hot and how much more heat it retains simply because it's not trees and grass, right?
And all the emissions and
and it's that concrete just takes in that heat and retains it. That's what it does. If it's got cool, it retains cool. If it's got heat, it retains heat. And in LA, there were people. I was looking at people in their cars on the 10. I used to drive 3 hours every day to get to work to LA, like a whole bunch of dumb other people do, right? Sitting in that car, the outside temp on the 10 was 163 degrees. From his car thermometer, right? I mean, that's the concrete increasing the heat, which isn't doing anything. It's not helping. That's not helping the overall, right? So people living in places like that in concrete havens they're basically in a hell on earth as things heat up, and that's going to affect our health even more, especially in LA where you don't really have healthy air anymore. Jerry Brown's selling you the idea that fracking's okay.
Quick thing on the timing.
Yes.
Somebody's saying that Kentucky is Central Time. Is it? I know. I think it splits in the middle. I think there's Eastern and Western Kentucky.
Oh,
so,
does it? Shit.
Well, we can figure it out.
If even better, if so, actually, I'd rather have it an hour earlier. So either way, I'll do it. We'll figure out what's up with that, though. So.
Okay. Well,
and remember, everybody, I'm just restreaming what Senator Sanders is putting out. Actually, it's not the Senator Sanders page. It's the Bernie Sanders Facebook page, which is somehow hard to find. You type in Bernie Sanders, you get the Senator Sanders Facebook. That's not it. You need to go to the Bernie Sanders Facebook page, and that's where they're streaming this stuff. I'm just grabbing that stream and running it through here so we can have this conversation. But if you ever want to go there or not have to listen to us, there you go. But I know you guys are here for the conversation, so thank you for being here.
I think we have decided that it's going to be Eastern Time for Kentucky.
It is? Okay. Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, it's the city is divided, but I need to check where it is. But it'll either be 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Just pay attention, folks, and listen. Get notifications, and you'll get a little notification on your phone. If you haven't clicked the little bell on our Uphill Media and gotten notifications and are just waiting, just to see if it happens to drop in your lap. Don't do that.
Just stay your whole day, wait with bated breath until we go live with something else, is what Laura's saying. Right. Just do nothing else. Catherine W. is saying other places are saying it's 6 Eastern, and that's kind of what I figured. They just give Eastern time to be safe. So that's fine. Great. We'll see you then.
Okay.
And John Moore, I'm terrible. Yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
We are proud of that.
Yeah, it's not what I'm here for. That's and yes, exactly. Keep your YouTube up. Keep your YouTube up. I don't even want to touch that one. That's the worst marketing tagline ever. No. But depending on what your YouTube channel is, actually, that's actually pretty good, Melissa. I just had to put it in the right frame of mind. Okay. See you guys. This is degrading fast. Gil Scott Heron, the revolution will not be televised. It's going to be live streamed. But live streaming requires your help. If we don't share, if we don't engage in these live streams, if we don't subscribe, if we don't follow, if we don't help, we're never going to reach the numbers that we need to reach. We're never going to save this planet. We're never going to unify and turn us into a civilization we're kind of looking for. So I need your help. And so does every other independent media network on the internet. And we'll talk more about that next week because you're all making me want to do it. So see you guys in a little bit. Thanks for being here.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry R. Women Liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.